Good evening. It's Tuesday, 4th of February 2025, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Retaliatory actions. China imposes tariff on US coal, LNG and more in retaliation for US trade levies. Not for sale. Denmark reaffirms sovereignty over Greenland, declares it will never be for sale under any circumstance. Medical breakthrough. Brain implant helps paralyzed patients regain limb function and sensation using AI.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening once again, and thank you for joining us on World News Tonight. And we bring to you the latest updates of China now. China will impose tariffs of 15% on imports of coal and liquefied natural gas from the United States in retaliation for Washington's 10% levies on Chinese goods. China's Ministry of Finance also announced that there will be 10% tariffs on imports from the US of crude oil, agricultural machinery, large displacement vehicles and pickup trucks.
US tariffs on China are now in effect, with an additional 10% duty placed on all their goods from 1 minute past midnight on Tuesday. China retaliated within minutes, with its finance ministry announcing it will apply a 15% tariff on US coal and liquefied natural gas on February 10th, as well as an additional 10% on crude oil, farm equipment and some vehicles. A White House spokesperson had said Monday that President Donald Trump will be speaking with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the next couple of days, as the world's two largest economies seek a deal that could avert a broader trade war and avoid a deepening conflict. The call would be Trump and Xi's first known talks since Trump took office on January 20th. On Saturday, Trump ordered sweeping tariffs on goods not only from China, but also Mexico and Canada, part of demands they stop the flow of illegal fentanyl, a leading cause of drug overdoses in the US. Trump backed away from his tariff threat against Mexico and Canada on Monday after speaking to leaders of both countries. Before China's Lunar New Year holiday, a foreign ministry spokesperson insisted that Beijing has always firmly safeguarded its national interests, but signaled an openness to talks. On Monday, Trump threatened to further ramp up tariffs on China. He described Tuesday's tariffs as an opening salvo. During his campaign for the presidency, Trump had promised a steeper levy of 60% on Chinese goods. The US has said China is the primary source of the precursor chemicals synthesized into fentanyl by drug cartels in Mexico. China has called fentanyl America's problem and said it would challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization.
Heading over to India now, there have been 160 reported cases of GBS, an auto-inflammatory disease which is triggered autoantibodies that lead to paralysis since early January in Pune, an education and IT hub. The outbreak is being linked to contaminated food and water, especially a bacterial pathogen, which is known to trigger the disease. And among the affected, there is a 6-year-old boy whose first symptoms appeared as a difficulty of holding a pencil within days. He was paralyzed and placed on a ventilator, highlighting the severity of the condition. Authorities say 48 patients remain in intensive care, with 21 on ventilators, while 38 have been discharged. Health officials are urging residents to drink boiled water and avoid undercooked food as investigations continue to determine the exact source of the outbreak. With experts warning that early diagnosis is crucial, special hospital wards have been set up, with WHO teams are now assisting local authorities in tracking and managing the crisis. As Pune battled the outbreak, the focus remains on containment, treatment and preventing further infections. And more on the closure of the USAID organization. A group of democratic lawmakers, checked by dozens of agency employees and contractors, held a protest in front of the USAID headquarters, which was shut due to employees, according to an internal email sent by media sources.
Furloughed employees and contractors protested in front of the USAID headquarters after the Trump administration on Monday moved to shut down the agency. Employees have been locked out of its headquarters since Trump ordered a freeze on most US foreign aid hours after taking office. USAID distributes billions of dollars of humanitarian aid around the world. However, Trump has said he wants to ensure it aligns with his America First policy. USAID provided 42% of all humanitarian aid tracked by the United Nations in 2024 and accounts for less than 1% of the total United States budget. Billionaire Elon Musk has had the agency in his sights for closure and is tasked with downsizing the federal government. A senior White House official speaking anonymously said Trump was considering merging USAID into the State Department and had entrusted Elon to oversee the efficiency of this agency. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters in San Salvador he was now the acting head of USAID, calling the agency completely unresponsive. Meanwhile, Noam Unga, an analyst with Washington think tank CSIS, believes the move could come at the cost of the US position in the world. The State Department issued worldwide stop work directives after Trump's freeze order, with the exception of emergency food assistance.
And over in the EU now, European Union leaders convened in Brussels for an informal retreat to discuss the strengthening the continent's defense capabilities and addressing the economic and political impact of the US President Donald Trump's recent tariff decisions.
European Union leaders gathered in Brussels for informal discussions centered on defense and security. The meeting addressed concerns over potential US tariffs on European goods, as indicated by President Donald Trump. While French President Emmanuel Macron stressed Europe's need to assert itself if its commercial interests are threatened, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz expressed a preference for cooperation. Other leaders, including Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, also highlighted the negative implications of a trade war and the importance of unity. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also joined the bloc's 27 leaders in the meeting. Starmer became the first UK Prime Minister to attend an EU leaders meeting since the country left the bloc 5 years ago.
And we move on to a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. And welcome back. The World Health Organization could face a $400 million budget cut accordingly to a newly released document.
Opening its annual executive board meeting on Monday, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus defended its work and recent reforms. He also again called on the US to reconsider its exit. The budget cut will be addressed at the February 3rd to 11th meeting in Geneva as member state representatives discuss the agency's funding and work for the 2026 to 27 period. The newly released document shows the board wants to reduce its base program section of the budget from a proposed $5.3 billion to $4.9 billion. That's part of the originally proposed $7.5 billion budget, including money to eradicate polio and tackle emergencies. The US is the WHO's biggest government donor, contributing around 18% of its overall funding. The agency has already separately taken some cost-cutting steps after Trump's announcement. But the document adds some board representatives also wanted to send a message that the WHO would preserve its strategic direction despite the challenges. Trump moved to exit the WHO on his first day in office 2 weeks ago. The process will take 1 year under US law. On Monday, Tedros also specifically addressed some of Trump's criticisms, including around the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the WHO's independence. He said the agency acted fast on the COVID outbreak, adding that the WHO is happy to say no to member states where requests go against its mission or science.
And as China announces tariffs on US goods, President Donald Trump has agreed to hold off imposing 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico for 30 days, pulling the North American neighbors back from the brink of a potentially damaging trade war. After last-minute calls with Trump, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau agreed to reinforce his country's border with the US to clamp down migration and the flow of the deadly drug fentanyl.
U.S. President Donald Trump paused new tariffs on Mexico for 1 month after Mexico agreed to reinforce its northern border with 10,000 National Guard members to stem the flow of illegal drugs. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum told reporters on Monday the agreement includes a U.S. commitment to act to prevent trafficking of high-powered weapons to Mexico. Trump on social media said the two leaders will have negotiations on the tariffs during the 1-month pause. He also said Mexico sending soldiers to the border will stem the flow of narcotics, fentanyl in particular, as well as curb illegal immigration. The two leaders spoke by phone on Monday as a midnight tariff deadline loomed. U.S. tariffs on Canada and China still remain poised to take effect on Tuesday, as well as retaliatory tariffs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Saturday said Canada would impose 25% tariffs on billions of dollars of U.S. goods in response to the U.S. measures. Trump says the tariffs will stay in place until Canada does more to fight illegal migrants and fentanyl smuggling.
Now, positive news coming from the conflict in Congo. The alliance of the rebel groups in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have declared a humanitarian ceasefire. In a statement, the group, which includes the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, cited humanitarian reasons for the ceasefire after capturing territory in the eastern parts of the country.
Guns have fallen silent over Goma, and health workers are determined to take advantage of the eerie calm. In the Kashaka camp, Doctors Without Borders have reopened this clinic. Since reopening its doors, patients have been flocking to the clinic, and the humanitarian needs are enormous. With the injured, the fighting has also claimed many lives. According to provisional figures, hundreds of people have been killed in the space of a few days, and nearly 3,000 left injured. But before medical staff can fully resume their work here, they are in desperate need of supplies. The recent fighting in North Kivu has exacerbated the region's humanitarian crisis. The UN says more than 500,000 people have been displaced since the beginning of January.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen reiterates that Greenland is not for sale after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the President Donald Trump's interest in acquiring the island was not a joke. Trump says he will make the autonomous territory of Denmark a part of the United States and not ruled out of using military or economic power to persuade Denmark to hand it over.
Denmark has once again made it clear Greenland is not for sale. Speaking ahead of an EU leaders meeting in Brussels, Danish Prime Minister reaffirmed that Greenland remains part of the Kingdom of Denmark and dismissed any possibility of a sale to the United States. Her statement comes as US President Donald Trump has reiterated his interest in acquiring the autonomous territory, even suggesting that military or economic pressure could be used to persuade Denmark. However, she acknowledged the growing strategic importance of the Arctic region, agreeing that security and defense in the area should be a priority. While Denmark remains firm on its sovereignty over Greenland, discussions on Arctic security could open up the door for further cooperation between the two allies. Whether this marks the beginning of negotiations or just another diplomatic standoff remains to be seen.
Earthquake fears have prompted people to flee Santorini as Greece's most popular island destination continues to be hit by what scientists described as a barrage of tremors. With authorities on heightened alert amid mounting concerns of an impending natural disaster, residents, tourists and workers are scrambling to leave of the island on the ferries and planes. More than 200 undersea tremors shook the island over the weekend, most in waters between Santorini and the Amorphos, the Cyclades' eastmost isle, with scores of fresh overnight earthquakes prompting people to sleep outside or in their cars. Later in the days, as speculation of a volcanic eruption also grew, he emphasized that the earthquakes were tectonic, not volcanic. And we move on to a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. And welcome back. And when we think of guardian animals, dogs usually come to mind. But a president in Brazil has found an unexpected security companion, one that's proving surprisingly effective. Take a look.
Far from Brazil's famous beaches, in its rural south, lies the town of São Pedro de Alcântara, where security at this prison, you could say, has gone to the birds. These geese patrol the fence perimeter between the prison yard and the outer walls. Prison guard Marcos Coronetti invited us to take a gander. He says back in 2009, when they had to retire their guard dogs, another prison guard thought, why not give these loud, aggressive birds a try? Of course, this isn't their main line of defense. This is a maximum security prison housing 1,300 inmates convicted of anything from murder to kidnapping. There are more than 300 cameras and several armed tower guards. The geese are another layer. The inmates seem to have gotten used to them. This man, who wanted to remain anonymous, mentioned one goose in particular named Pew. While the geese are a novel approach here, the concept isn't new. Flying back through history, geese are credited with alerting the ancient Romans about the invading Gauls around 390 BC. More recently, they were reportedly used to help monitor a border area between Vietnam and China during the COVID-19 pandemic. Back in Brazil, we'd be remiss to not acknowledge the prison system has bigger problems than guard animals. In recent decades, Brazil's prison population has soared. It now has the third largest number of incarcerated people in the world, after the US and China. The problems of overcrowding are more prevalent in the big cities and north of Brazil, Bachetta says. In the south, where the geese live, Marcos Coronetti understands this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. But here, in the countryside, these birds of a feather continue to waddle and watch. Just don't get them riled up.
A brain implant used for the first time is helping a patient with paralysis regain use of his limbs. The use of artificial intelligence is helping the process, also making it possible for the man to feel the objects again.
For years, Keith Thomas lived out his dream in Manhattan, managing hundreds of people for a Wall Street firm, and few worries weighing him down. But a Long Island pool accident in 2020 changed his whole life, paralyzing the 45-year-old from the mid-chest down and robbing him of sensation and movement in all of his limbs, at least. Until a medical breakthrough at Northwell Health's Feinstein Institute for Medical Research, where lead bioengineer Chad Boughton and his team developed a technology they call a double neural bypass. Chips are implanted in a patient's brain, and the signals for sensation and movement sent back and interpreted through artificial intelligence, and then redirected to the body and spine, creating a loop that could prove life-changing. Other neurotechnology companies, like Elon Musk's Neuralink, have implanted chips in patients to assist functionality, but recovery and restoring damaged neurons appears to be new ground. From picking up a cup,
what are you feeling, Keith? Like a jolt of energy.
To navigating a quick bite of Twizzlers.
Got it.
Wow. Last year, surgeons managed to place those chips in Keith's brain in areas that they spent months mapping out, leading to incremental improvements. And then, a watershed moment.
I'm ready.
When Keith actually felt his sister's palm for the first time since the accident.
That was an incredible moment, and there wasn't a dry eye in the lab.
And with 5 million people living in the U.S. with paralysis and 100 million worldwide, the significance is hard to overstate. A story whose next chapter is only beginning to be told.
And with that, we mark the end of today's bulletin. I'm Marsha Fernando, and we are going to leave you with the visuals from the Copenhagen Lights Festival, which is brightening the wintry city. Thank you for watching and have a good night.